In a previous interview, you talked about struggling throughout the season. So what changed and how are you able to turn the page so that the end of the season went a lot better?
When the 2024 WNBA season tipped off, it felt like Lexie Hull was on the verge of disappearing from the conversation entirely. And that's wild when you remember who we're talking about. This wasn't some late-round gamble or a role player fighting for a roster spot. Lexie was the 6th overall pick in the 2022 draft, a Stanford star, a national champion, a player who carried herself like the kind of cornerstone franchises build around. But instead of blossoming into that role, Hull found herself buried. Under coach Christie Sides, she wasn't logging meaningful minutes. She was logging splinters, sitting at the end of the bench, watching as players with smaller resumes and lower draft pedigrees leapfrogged her in the rotation. Fans noticed, and pretty soon, the whispers started growing louder. Was Lexie Hull ever going to deliver on the promise that made her a top draft pick? Or was she quietly sliding toward the dreaded label no young player wants attached to their name, draft bust? It wasn't just about minutes on the court. It was about perception. A player once hyped as a future star was suddenly being written out of the story before it even felt like she had a chance to start hers.
So you have basketball in your genes. Your grandfather played basketball, your dad, and you have a twin sister who you played basketball with growing up. What was it like growing up in that family dynamic?
Well, we have a super competitive family, and having my dad play basketball collegiately, knew that basketball was going to be put in my hands at an early age, but my parents were, super excited about having us try every sport imaginable. So yeah, we grew up, my sister and I, playing a little bit of everything.
And then came the earthquake. Caitlin Clark, a once-in-a-generation talent whose arrival in Indiana didn't just tweak the Fever's lineup, it reprogrammed the entire DNA of the franchise. Her game? Pure electricity in sneakers. She didn't just put up points, she bent the floor around her. Every time she touched the ball, defenders shifted, eyes locked in, the crowd leaned forward. Caitlin didn't just score, she pulled gravity. The moment she stepped into Indiana, everything changed. The offense suddenly had a heartbeat. The chemistry had spark. And just like that, every single player's trajectory shifted overnight. For Lexie Hull, this wasn't just a new teammate showing up, it was a lifeline. A second chance to redefine her role, to remind people why she was a top draft pick, and to prove she still belonged in the Fever's story. So if you're rooting for Lexie's resurgence, drop a Lexie show in the comments right now. Let's go.
I think it was important to get to know her off the court because I do think that, connections, getting to know people really play a part in the success of teams.
Lexie Hull has started to open up in interviews with She's for Sports and the Dunker Spot. And let's just say she didn't sugarcoat anything. She pulled back the curtain on what really changed inside that locker room. How Caitlin Clark's arrival didn't just give the team a spark, it flipped the trajectory of Lexie's entire career. And it wasn't just about her. It was about what that shift said about the Fever as a whole. A franchise that looked like a stumbling mess just a year ago is suddenly one of the most compelling stories in all of basketball. This isn't only a comeback story, it's a story of redemption, leadership, and culture change. A transformation so powerful it could shape the future of the Indiana Fever for years to come.
She's been called the clutch player by WNBA fans, and she was drafted to the W in 2022 with the Indiana Fever in the first round as the 6th pick. I'm talking about professional basketball player Lexie Hull.
The early months of 2024, brutal for Lexie Hull. All those college accolades, all that draft pedigree, none of it seemed to matter. She couldn't even crack the Fever's regular rotation. Instead, she sat on the sidelines, towel draped over her shoulders, watching as players like Katie Lou Samuelson and Christy Wallace, talented sure, but with nowhere near her ceiling, ate up the minutes that were supposed to be hers. For a former top 6 pick, it wasn't just frustrating, it was humiliating. The kind of stretch that makes fans whisper and makes a player wonder if the league is already slipping through her fingers.
And at the beginning of the season, my playing time definitely looked different than it did at the end. So trusting that, I was staying ready, putting in the work so that when I did get the minutes out on the court, that I could take full advantage of them. So I was just really proud of myself for trusting the process and staying the course.
That sting, it was real. Lexie went from being a star at Stanford, a champion, a leader, a player who carried herself like the future of a franchise, to sitting as a bench warmer in Indiana, watching games slip by without leaving her mark. The drop-off wasn't just a change in role. It was a mental mountain. A hurdle every bit as steep and punishing as any physical challenge on the court. For a player who was used to being the one, adjusting to being the afterthought tested her confidence, her patience, and her belief in whether she still had a place in the league at all.
The basketball part of the transition is really tough. Everybody out on the court was one of the best players on their college teams, definitely the best player likely from their high school team. So it's just this mishmash of the best basketball players, and then you're playing against people that have been there for years and years.
Meanwhile, the team itself was falling apart. The Indiana Fever stumbled out of the gates with a 1-8 record, 1 win, 8 losses. It was the kind of start that didn't just frustrate, it drained the life out of the fan base. In Indianapolis, people weren't just disappointed, they were desperate, begging for answers, searching for any sign that things could turn around. But those answers, they weren't coming. The team looked lost, the direction unclear, and hope was slipping through the cracks one game at a time.
I think we were just sick that we had lost so many games, and also feeling like we were better than that.
Headlines were filled with sharp criticisms. Poor rotations, leaky defense, zero chemistry. Everyone in the locker room felt the pressure, and Hall, stuck on the sideline, had to fight her own doubts, while the entire ship looked like it was sinking.
Yeah, I think part of my role is just getting to the open spots, and we have such a good offense that people find the open person. So to be that open person, you get excited. You get excited for the opportunity to shoot and score and be part of the momentum.
But Lexie Hull refused to let the narrative write her out. Instead of folding, she doubled down on the grind. She sharpened her cuts, smoothed out her jumper, and stayed locked in, ready to seize whatever scraps of opportunity might come her way. And through all of it, she leaned on something you won't find on a stat sheet, the quiet encouragement of her teammates. Even when the box scores painted her as invisible, there were players in that locker room who still believed in her potential. They reminded her of who she was and what she could become again. That belief, it became fuel. The kind of fire that keeps a player alive when the world is ready to count them out.
Going to your Fever season, looking at the offensive side of the ball, what is it like playing off of Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston?
They make my job really easy, right? It's awesome. And it's really cool to see all of them just grow, not only from this year, but playing 3 years with Kelsey, 2 years with Aaliyah. They're so impressive.
And then Caitlin Clark arrived, and everything changed. The moment she stepped into that locker room, it was like somebody flipped the switch and turned the lights back on. Practices suddenly had energy again. There was juice, intensity, and urgency in every drill. Fans who had been checked out were now flooding arenas just to catch a glimpse. And overnight, Indiana went from being the butt of league-wide jokes to the hottest ticket in the WNBA. Clark brought more than just her game. She brought an edge, a relentless drive to compete, to win, to push the pace. And the best part? She made sure everyone around her had to match that fire. Indiana wasn't a punchline anymore. With Clark in the building, the Fever were relevant again, and Lexie Hull finally had the stage to fight for her own redemption.
And I think it's really fun because they garner so much attention, obviously, from the other team's defense. So then it allows the other players, me included, to make cuts, make reads, and they're really good at finding, those openings and giving the ball up when it's needed and finding the better shot. So it's really fun, and I feel really lucky to get to play with them.
As Hull herself put it with a laugh, "We play against guys in practice, and if they're not winning, Caitlin's going to do everything she can to make sure they're competing. That's not just energy, that's transformation."
I mean, I definitely got passes and tried to finish when I wasn't expecting to get the ball. So like now it's like, okay, every cut I have, every cut I make, every fast break I run, like I have a real opportunity to get the ball, which definitely like took me a second. And I think it really just took one of those to really get my head around like, oh, she's all the way down at the other end of the floor and she could still make the pass to me down at the block at this end. So, I mean, it's been awesome.
What Caitlin Clark brought to Indiana was more than just star power. She came in with a basketball brain wired on fast forward. She read defenses like a veteran quarterback, dissecting coverages in real time and threading passes into windows her teammates didn't even know existed. For Lexie Hull, it was a revelation. Suddenly, she was wide open, finding herself in scoring positions she'd never been in before. "She's making passes I didn't even think were possible," Hull admitted, almost in disbelief. Clark's gravity pulled defenders toward her like a magnet, and her vision carved them up, freeing teammates in ways that completely transformed the offense. The Fever weren't stuck in the mud anymore. With Clark running the show, the system wasn't just functioning, it was humming.
It's so fun to be able to know that you're not just cutting to cut, knowing that you're cutting with the possibility of like actually making a really cool play. So that makes it that much more worthwhile.
Clark's fire was contagious. Her competitiveness didn't just light her own game, it spread through the Fever roster like wildfire. Suddenly, players who once questioned their limits started carrying themselves like they could go toe-to-toe with anyone in the league. The rookie wasn't just dropping buckets, she was dropping belief. And for Lexie Hull, that was everything. Clark's maturity, her leadership, her drive, it landed instantly with the team. In one swoop, she elevated morale and performance, flipping the Fever from a group searching for answers into a squad that believed again. For Lexie, that belief was fuel. It wasn't just about being on the roster anymore, it was about belonging in the fight.
Yeah, I think, she sees the game at a bigger scale, obviously with the platform that she's created for herself, and then that's transitioned to the game. It's huge. And I think like for me, especially as a point guard and as someone that's delivering a lot of the passes that lead to shots, like if I miss, she's definitely going to say like, you got the next one. Like I can count on her for keeping me like confident and positive. So yeah, I think that shows the player that she is and the leader she is as a point guard.
And soon, the results started to show. The Fever, once chaotic and stagnant, began to click. The offense found rhythm, possessions had flow. Suddenly, Indiana wasn't just surviving, they were evolving into a cohesive, dangerous attack. Lexie Hull herself admitted the shift. The game becomes so much more fun when you know your cuts actually give you a real chance to make a play. Clark gave her that chance. She wasn't just a star in the spotlight, she was a game changer who elevated the people around her. She reshaped the floor, rewired the offense, and in real time, she altered the trajectory of teammates like Hull. For Lexie, it wasn't just about minutes anymore. It was about impact. And finally, she was back in the conversation.
It's really awesome to get to know her as well because, she's a great person, but you have all these expectations put on her and our team has put on her and fans have put on her. So to see her kind of be so mature in that transition, it's been really awesome. And I'm just really proud to, have her on the team, and it's been exciting.
What's wild is that the transformation didn't start under the bright lights with cameras rolling. It started where nobody was watching, behind closed doors in practice. Lexie Hull explained it perfectly. Those sessions stopped being drills. They became battles, scrimmages, straight-up wars. And the reason was simple. Caitlin Clark demanded it. If a set broke down, Clark didn't let it slide. She pushed teammates to fix it right there on the spot. No excuses, no shortcuts. Her competitiveness raised the standard, and the rest of the roster had no choice but to rise with her. Coaches noticed it too. Practices that once dragged suddenly had teeth. Every rep mattered. Every possession carried weight. And out of that fire, a real team identity started to form. The Fever weren't just going through the motions anymore. They were becoming something dangerous.
The Indiana Fever had a history-making year. What was that like for you to be a part of that?
I'm really grateful for the opportunity to not only play in the WNBA, but to be on a team like the Indiana Fever. I've seen so much growth, not only on the team side, how we're performing on the court, but also the growth in fans. I mean, on the road, it felt like home games. We're playing in sold-out arenas that we have not played in the last 2 years before that. So, I mean, it's just really exciting.
For Lexie Hull, this transformation wasn't just a story about the team. It was personal. This wasn't just about wins and losses. It was about reclaiming her identity, proving she belonged, and writing a new chapter in a career many had already started to close the book on.
All of it comes down to trusting the process, and part of that process is making sure that the work's getting done.
Lexie Hull threw herself into the details. She tightened up her cuts, drilled her footwork, and chased consistency with her jumper like her career depended on it, because in a lot of ways it did. During the Olympic break, she had a full month of practice to lock in. Seeing those shooting percentages climb gave me the belief I needed, she admitted. That quiet grind in the dark started to show under the lights. By the time the second half of the season rolled around, Lexie Hull wasn't just another body at the end of the bench. She had carved out a real role in Indiana's offense, proof that her persistence and work ethic had rewritten her place in the Fever's story.
I think one thing that our coaches did during that break, I mean, we had a full month of practice pretty much during the Olympic break, and they would put up every day after practice our shooting percentages from 2s and 3s during drills, during scrimmages, during everything. And I think that helped me because, some people will probably like, it's so annoying, whatever, but I personally like.
And here's the truth. None of it happens without Caitlin Clark. Clark's ability to warp defenses was like giving Lexie Hull an open runway. Defenders collapsed on Caitlin the moment she crossed half court, and suddenly, Lexie had the space she'd been searching for since she entered the league. Kelsey and Caitlin attract so much attention, Hull explained. That frees players like me to cut and find openings. And those openings started turning into buckets. Her percentages spiked, her confidence soared, and when the Fever needed someone to make plays in high-pressure moments, Lexie wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. She was delivering. Suddenly, Indiana wasn't stumbling through games. They were surging, and Lexie Hull was right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I think, like, numbers don't lie, unfortunately, and they're very drastic. My first 2 years, I was just so upset because I was putting in so much work, and my shooting percentages, I would granted get like 1 or 2 at the max, 3s a game. So it's hard to be super efficient when the pressure is really on for those couple shots. But the numbers don't lie. So it really allows you to look at improvements and really shoot for goals and keep yourself like accountable. And I really like that part of it.
As the Fever started stacking wins, the chemistry was undeniable. We never turned on each other, Lexie Hull shared. That unity, that mindset, was what carried them through the rough patches when everything could have fallen apart. And fans saw it too. Arenas that had once been half empty were now packed wall to wall. Social media was flooded with clips, highlights, and rallying cries for this new-look Fever squad. The energy wasn't just inside the locker room, it was spreading across the city and beyond. Hull described the adrenaline of those home games. Playing in front of a sold-out crowd gave us a type of energy we hadn't felt in years. It's hard to even put into words how much it meant. Indianapolis, once starved, desperate for a team to believe in, was buzzing again. The Fever weren't just competing, they were alive.
All of these people were supporting me this whole time, and I didn't know that they were supporting me until that moment. So like, you kind of forget that there's these people behind the scenes until they come out of the woodwork and say like, I've been following along this whole time. Like, I'm so proud of you. And that just feels so good to know that there's, such a community behind everybody on our team, even when you don't hear it every day.
This was bigger than a comeback story. It was a statement. With Caitlin Clark orchestrating the offense and Lexie Hull finally blossoming into the player fans always believed she could be, the Fever weren't just chasing a playoff berth anymore. They were rewriting the ceiling of what this franchise could be. The only questions left were the ones that make sports irresistible. How far could this group really go? And could they keep this rare chemistry alive once the pressure and expectations kept climbing? The answers weren't clear yet, but one thing was certain. Indiana was no longer in the shadows. The Fever were here, and they had something the whole league had to pay attention to.
And you and Erica Wheeler started swapping outfits, so where did that idea come from?
Our styles are so drastically different. So we were just joking, like, I wonder what it would look like if you could pull it off. And the first outfit was something so outside of what I would have ever picked out of my closet. And they're like, that's not going to look good on me. I'm like, all right, let's try. So then I tried it on and everyone was like, you pull it off, you pull it off. So then it just became part of the pregame tradition. And it's a really fun, lighthearted way to just, get us in the mood.
And it wasn't just on the floor where the transformation showed. Off the court, the Fever's rise was just as dramatic. Players like Lexie Hull suddenly found themselves living in a completely new reality. What used to be quick, forgettable errands around Indianapolis now turned into impromptu autograph sessions. Trips to the grocery store or the coffee shop suddenly meant being stopped by fans eager for pictures, signatures, or just a moment of connection. The same faces that once slipped through the city anonymously were now household names. For Hull, it was thrilling, proof that the hard work and the grind had finally paid off. But it was overwhelming too. The pressure was heavier, the spotlight brighter, and every step she took felt like it carried new weight.
Walking through the grocery store in Indianapolis and trying to just go get some groceries and someone fist bumps me and says, "Go Fever." That's just a really cool environment, and it shows, the dedication of the fans and the fandom in the city. So that part's been awesome.
Fame, as Hull learned, is a double-edged sword. Every game came with online breakdowns. Every loss came with a wave of noise, and every win brought its own new pressures.
Pros, it's pretty obvious. We have people filling the stands. We have people cheering. We have people so excited for the individual success of the teams, but also the league as well as the players. So there's so many more eyes on the game.
Social media became both a blessing and a burden for Lexie Hull. On one hand, the constant stream of feedback fueled her, proof that fans were watching, engaging, and invested in her journey. But on the other hand, it tested her resolve in ways the box score never could. After losses, scrolling through the comments wasn't just background noise. It was a reminder of how heavy the spotlight had become. Every missed shot, every mistake, dissected by strangers with instant opinions. It's part of the job, she admitted, but it's not easy. In those words, Lexie opened a window into the emotional toll that comes with stardom. The highs were exhilarating, but the lows cut deeper than most people ever see.
It's hard. It's easy to say, don't read it, but everybody does a little bit. And I think it's having that support system to help keep you on track.
Through it all, the Fever leaned on each other. The locker room stopped being just a place to draw up plays or go over scouting reports. It became something deeper, a sanctuary, a space where the noise from the outside world couldn't touch them, where the focus stayed locked on growth, resilience, and camaraderie. This wasn't a team fractured by pressure. It was a group bonded by accountability and genuine trust. And that foundation mattered. It gave them the stability to navigate a season that tested everyone in ways fans will never fully see. They weren't just surviving the spotlight anymore. They were learning how to own it, together.
The biggest thing is finding people to kind of get you out of that cycle and get you to thinking about the positive things you did, even though a lot of times people online aren't talking about the positive things.
The story of the Indiana Fever is nothing short of remarkable. From a franchise buried in failure to one of the most talked about teams in basketball, they became proof that resilience and unity can flip an entire narrative. And at the heart of that turnaround was Lexie Hull's personal resurgence. Her patience, her relentless grind, and her ability to seize the moment when it finally came, all of it helped fuel Indiana's rise. But Lexie is the first to admit, Caitlin Clark was the catalyst. "She's not just a star player," Hull said. "She's a force who makes everyone around her better." And that's the undeniable truth. Clark didn't just lift her own game, she lifted an entire franchise, on the floor and off it.
The fact that people are talking about the WNBA, people are tuning in to our games, that's what we want to hear, and that's only going to get us farther as we go on.
Indiana's rise wasn't just about stacking wins. It was about building an identity, sold-out arenas, a fan base that rediscovered its fire, and a team culture that put accountability above excuses. That's what set the stage for long-term success. Lexie Hull put it best. "We're not just playing for ourselves. We're playing for something bigger. And that something bigger is exactly what makes this Fever squad so dangerous." Looking ahead, with Caitlin Clark steering the ship, Lexie Hull thriving in her role, and stars like Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell ready to dominate, the Fever aren't just contenders anymore. They're a powerhouse in the making, a team with the potential to reshape not only their own future, but the narrative of the entire WNBA.
I think it's moving in a good direction. I think that it's because it's more competitive and there's more eyes on it. The pool of coaches that we can choose from, I think, will only get bigger and bigger. I think we're going to have great coaches coming up, and just excited to see, what those eras look like. Like, it's unpredictable at this point, but excited to, talk about it in a year from now.
But make no mistake, this is only the beginning. The Fever have already proven they can weather adversity, flip the narrative, and build real momentum. Now comes the bigger question. Can they take that next step? Can they leap from being contenders to cementing themselves among the WNBA's elite? Only time will tell. So what do you think? Are the Fever ready to carve their place as one of the league's great teams? Drop a Lexie show in the comments to show your support. And don't forget, hit like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss a moment. Click the video on your screen, and we'll see you in the next one.